We are live. I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode of Heart to Heart with Bree. Tonight's guest is Minister Angela Hope. Angela, would you please introduce yourself to the viewers?
Yes, hi, everyone, and happy Sunday, happy Memorial Weekend. We celebrate the lives of those who have been on the front line for this country for many, many years. And we're just thankful for the blessings of the Lord. My name is Angela Hope. I am the founder of A Hope and Company, and where we provide administrative services and wedding officiant services. And I am just grateful to be here with my beautiful sister Bree tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, and Angela, it's such a pleasure to have you back. And we're here to discuss your latest book, Committed to the Covenant.
Look at
I'm so
you.
excited. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. I'd like to say to the viewers, whether you watch the live or the replay, please feel free to post your questions and your comments. So, Angela, I'll jump right into it. What is a covenant for those who don't know?
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for purchasing the book. I appreciate the love and the support. Let me get right over here to our notes this evening and talk about first to set this the tone and what an actual covenant does mean. So when we think about a marriage covenant, it means a sacred, lifelong made commitment made before God between a husband and a wife. Unlike a legal contract, as we know, which is based on mutual benefits and can be broken if terms aren't met. So if I don't like you, you don't like me, we can call it quits. A marriage covenant is about unconditional love, faithfulness, and a mutual devotion, regardless of the circumstances. Now, when we talk about the biblical covenant, that's more than a contract. It's a sacred bond where God commits himself to his people, revealing his character, purpose, and plan for salvation. So when we think about a covenant, it's a solemn binding agreement between God and humans, often involving promises, obligations, and a sign or symbol. It is central to biblical theology and reflects God's desire for a committed relationship with his people. Now, I know
It's
that was a lot,
serious. No, but
but
it's I wanted you to explain to the viewers because what I'm hoping we'll get through what we'll put through tonight is just how serious the marital vow is. I'd like to welcome my dear friend Mikey Go. Thank you so much for tuning in, Mikey. So please explain the reverence, because I think too many people, it's like married, divorce, married, divorce, married, divorce. And it's like, are you really taking the time to understand, the sacredness of a marital vow?
sure. So, Bree, when I think about us as Americans, um, year after year after year, centuries after centuries, marriage has always been so romanticized. When we think about the films and the movie, the cowboy always gets the girl at the end and gives that dramatic kiss. When we think about all the movies, even today, and two people meet each other and all the things that happen in between a film, but the film is all around the couple comes together at the end, and it's I love you and you love me and there's an attraction and all of these things. So I think when we have built our marriages and relationships on what we've seen before us, all the things about the covenant and the seriousness and the reverence of two people really coming together according to God's word since the Garden of Eve, when God made woman out of Adam's rib. sometimes we don't even think about any of those things when we are going into like she looked good, he looked good. And let's just be real. I know this is a beautiful Christian platform, but the world and the society is now, how her BBL looks and how strong and how good he looks. At the end of the day, it really has nothing to do with the covenant, not even marriage, the covenant, what that means when you say you're coming together as two people to live a life and honor God. It doesn't exist anymore.
It's, you know what, it's as I read your book, I had to look back on when I got married, which is years ago. And it was not a great experience for me, but because of my Christian belief, I told myself, well, I made a vow to God, so I have to stick it out. And I stuck it out as long as I was able to.
Sure.
But then it was like I had to let it go when I realized it was not the right thing for me. And I'm hoping that, what the viewers will take the time to think about is, I think sometimes loneliness, desperation, some people, my biological clock is ticking, or
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm 60 something years old. If I don't do it now, it will never happen. But we have to really do it for the right reason. So I want you to break down the importance of being committed to the covenant, because what I take from it is, you know what? I can't say, you know what, you're boring as heck. Why am I still with you? Or I'm not attracted to you anymore. You know what? You gained some weight. So, let's talk about the importance of being, because I think being committed to the covenant will help the couples when they go through those rocky times.
So I appreciate the question. If I could refer to the book, and I know you plan to
Sure.
do that throughout this time together. And again, thank you. And for those who are joining us, and I'm excited to be here to talk about this. And
Yes.
I'm excited to be here to talk about it, not because I have this perfect fairy tale marriage, not because of that, but because of the 28 years I've learned a lot. And some of the things that you're asking about in my book, we first start out with communication with your spouse, infidelity and betrayal in marriage, unrealistic expectations, financial problems and money conflicts, growing apart, lack of intimacy, not committed to the marriage, domestic abuse, and committed to the covenant, how how couples keep the fire ignited. These are all just a few elements when it comes to marriage.
But
Just a
very
few.
serious,
I just tapped on a few.
this is the thing though. It's not a long read. But what I like about it is you go straight to the point, and you put a lot of information in there. I think this book is perfect for a couple that's engaged or a couple that's married and you're going through a rocky time, because I think this is a great tool for you to sit and read it together, ask each other questions. Because Angela, as I read it, like I said, I stopped and I had to look back, and I realized, you know what? If I had read a book like this before I got married, I wouldn't have done it, because I would have known this is not the right situation for me. But I think this book can help those who are like going through a rocky time. I think it's a great, like I said, it's a wonderful tool. So, once again, I'm just so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. And that's what it started out to be, is a guide. And when you said for couples who are getting married, I just spoke with a couple yesterday that I'll be officiating their wedding sometime in August, and we were having our counseling session, and we hadn't talked since February. And I was saying to them that I just completed a book, and that I would be sending them a copy because we're doing coaching and we're doing counseling
Yeah.
before their time. And I'm like you, Bree. I come from, I like you, you like me. We start dating, and all of the things that I just named. You really didn't talk. You talked about them, but you
It's
didn't.
true. It's true.
It wasn't a breakdown. It wasn't line by line, precept by precept. You got married because, for me, all I saw is my parents have a 60-year marriage, a
Yes.
beautiful marriage. So coming up, rather I wanted to, because you see, I open up in my book that, I never really wanted to be married. But
Right.
when you think about, oh, I met someone and they're pursuing me and we decide to get married, there were conversation about things, but not to this degree that here we are now able to break it down
Yes.
again, line by line, precept by precept. So you're making that comment. Thank you so much that you read it, seeing by saying, hey, if I would have had this, I would have maybe taken different things into consideration, or
Yes.
I wouldn't have done it at all.
Yes. No, honestly, because I think this book is filled with a lot of wisdom. Hello, Andrew. Thank you so much for tuning in. A lot of wisdom. You know, like I said, I did not ask myself the questions, and I went through premarital counseling.
Mhm.
But Jamaica, there's this old saying, like, see me and come live with me, two different things. And it's true because you don't really know a person until you're living with them. And you have some people out there who are great actors. They play a role. You don't know the real person until you're married to them. And I do think that sometimes there are red flags, but because we're so in love with the idea of walking down the aisle, being queen for the day, and it's like I want my fairy tale
The
wedding,
fairy
and
tale, the fairy tale.
that becomes the priority instead of looking at the big picture like this is a lifelong commitment. So I think we do have to take this seriously. I want you to read where is it from page 13, the paragraph that begins at the bottom, Ecclesiastes 4:12,
Okay.
and take it to the end on page 14.
All right. All right. Well, again, I want to say thank you for having me, and thank you for the opportunity to really like talk about it, you know?
Well, thank you,
Uh,
because listen, I really believe that when I started to do this podcast, it was part of my healing journey. And I
yeah.
think there are a lot of us out there, like we may have gone through divorces. We haven't healed. Maybe we haven't gotten married yet, but we still haven't healed. I think if we take the time to read and to learn from books like yours, we'll make wiser decisions.
Yes. And to your point about not healing, when we think about a divorce or a separation, I've heard a lot of people say it's like a death.
It is.
It's like a death.
It is.
The scripture tells us, let no man put what I've put together, separate it or take it apart. However, a lot of marriages and a lot of coming together is not designed by God. It was
It's
not
true.
meant for us. My very first marriage, when I was a teenager, leaving my parents' home and jumping into God knows what, I had no clue. That wasn't ordained by God at all. But the beautiful thing is, I had two beautiful sons out of it, and
Yes.
I had a very tumultuous life for many years um, from abuse, and it taught me a lot. And so I was able to not take that experience as a death experience, but take it as a life lesson
Yes.
experience. So I turned it around for myself, not even realizing that I did that. But for some reason, for different people, it's different for everyone, depending on their own life experience. And it can be, like you said, you know, perhaps still grieving from that first relationship or that first marriage. the loss and never being able to rebound. And that comes from establishing that relationship with Christ again. And we can
Yes.
talk about that.
Definitely, definitely. Because the thing is, if we don't take the time to heal and understand what went wrong, that's why you have people getting married 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. It's
It's still
crazy, but it
It has happened,
happens.
baby. You know, you have people who like having 6 and 7 and 8 children. I'm not talking about in
Yeah,
many, many years ago because that was for,
right.
you know,
That was,
for
yeah,
work. But now it's like having another because it's looking for love. It's that newborn again to love and cuddle. And then when that little newborn gets 4 and 5, it's like, I need another one because you're
yes,
still trying to
yes.
find some type of satisfaction or healing or love.
Trying to
So we
fill that hole in the soul.
yeah, yeah. So, to the audience, I'm reading chapter 2. It's called Infidelity and Betrayal in Marriage, Vows Broken, Trust Shattered.
This is
I
a
hope
deep
you get the
chapter. This is
book.
a deep chapter.
So if I start where you asked me to, it says Ecclesiastes 4:12 in the English Standard Version says, and though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him, and threefold cord is not quickly broken. I have read this passage many a times while officiating ceremonies. Let me make sure I have this. Officiating ceremonies. The three strand represents the bride, the groom, and God. These strands symbolize one man, one woman, and God joined in a married relationship. You cannot do marriage without God. And I put that in there because that's my personal testimony. You just can't do it without God. You can't do it without God. When another man or woman enters into your marriage through infidelity, it changes the dynamics. Ultimately, it can destroy the plan of God for your marriage. Do you want me to
And you
connect
know
it
what?
further?
When I read that, I was like, I was blown away by that because it's true. You have people who try to justify, why they are having these affairs. And it's like at the end of the day, if you know that you are weak and you can't handle the ups and downs of a marriage, don't get married.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
get married because betrayal, it's a bitter pill to swallow.
it
It's a
is.
very hard thing to deal with. There are some couples who are able to come back from it, but at the end of the day, I mean, you can't. I think there are people who they pick fights intentionally as their excuse to go out and do what they want to do, but that's not marriage.
Yeah, and Bree, when you say um, for every person it affects them different. Yes, you're my
Yes.
husband, and I put in here, we say infidelity, aka word for he cheated or she cheated. But I said here, it for different people it means different things, because if you cheat on me, for me it could mean I'm not enough.
Yes.
It could mean for me, create some mental instability.
Yes.
For everybody is different. And it may not have anything to do with you and everything to do with the person having challenges of not being strong enough, not being really committed to the marriage. I think I have a chapter in there about, not, some people say I do, but they're really just not.
But they don't. They really, but
I think I
but
put that in.
but they really don't. So that's the thing. I think these are the things. If you are in a situation where the person that you're involved with, it could be the man, it could be the woman, but they are out there, they're already cheating. They're already out there doing these things before you're even married. My
Yeah.
thing is, then why would you go through with it? If the
Right.
person is exhibiting this behavior before the actual marriage, marriage is not a magic wand that's going to change that behavior
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
end of the day. And if you think, well, oh, he chose me. But guess what? If he chose you, but he's still hanging out with this other person, you did not win
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
end of the day. So I think I'm so glad that you're addressing this. And I have to read, because I tell you what, when you put, but have you ever heard the term, that's my work husband or wife? If you have said that, stop right now and never repeat it. This is not a game. It's not a game. People get hurt and it affects children. I mean, honestly, Angela, I mean, what's your take on that?
So yeah, in the book I talk about not using that term, oh, that's my work husband or that's my work wife. And I put in the book, clearly I'm not saying don't have healthy relationships at work. Because a lot
Right,
of team
right.
building takes place. These are people that you're with a lot of times more so than you are at home or with your
Yes,
spouse, depending on what type of job or position that you have. But we know our words are powerful, and life and death
yes.
is in the power of our tongue, and we start believing that if that is my work husband or my work wife, we start operating in that, even if there isn't any cheating, even if there isn't any infidelity, that he or she goes home to their mate or spouse, and vice versa. The fact that you start to operate like that from 9 to 5,
That emotional
that
bond. Think about that
emotional bond,
emotional bond, what
that
it does.
emotional bond,
Because if you get upset with your spouse and you already have that emotional bond with that individual and you're feeling
and
very
then you
vulnerable, that's the perfect time
And
for
then
the
you
affair
go to
to get
work and
started.
he or she said, "You want me to go pick you up a muffin down at the
Yes,
cafeteria?"
yes,
And oh, I
yes,
brought both of us coffee. You start operating that is your wife, husband. I mean, your work
yes.
husband or your work wife. And so I was saying, even in for newly married couples, don't even start that.
Right, don't. That's dangerous territory right
That's
there.
dangerous territory. Do you know there have been some companies and corporations, years ago, I've been in corporate years, 40, 50 years, right? And you always brought your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, or your wife. And do you know companies and corporations stopped allowing you to bring your spouse to Christmas parties years
Oh,
ago?
wow.
Because of so much cheating and infidelity taking place in the workplace.
That's
They put it
sad.
on budget, but if the CEO is cheating and he's got the work wife at work and all of those things, they started and a lot of people like, well, if I can't bring my husband or if I can't bring my wife like we used to do it, or they start having Christmas parties like daytime. But for me to get up and get dressed and go to my corporate Christmas party, then when all of that was like that,
Yes.
I can't bring my spouse. But that was
Right.
one of the reasons, because you had a lot of that work wife and work husband situations at work, and it was at the top of the corporation, so they just made
Wow.
that a ruling.
Not good. That
Yeah.
is definitely not good. So that will lead to my next question. Please explain why being committed to the covenant will allow marriages to prevail.
So yes, because Bree, every marriage is going to have ups and downs. That's just part of a marriage, because part of a marriage is, because it's the covenant, it really is an assignment. You are assigned to that person. That assignment is you are assigned to that person, and that person is assigned to you. And when you have two people who have to come together, or who are willing to come together, and then they cohabitate together in a household, as you said earlier, a lot of things will start to reveal itself. And so it is important that you understand that this is going to be a long road ahead of good times, the bad times, the ups and downs, and you can only do it with God's love. I talk about it. It is only God's love that can keep two people together, because when two people come together, they're coming with their own baggage. You're coming with
Yes.
your own baggage, good baggage or bad baggage. There's a situation that I know of, someone very close to us, that we were asking, there was like, you didn't tell us that you were getting married, and nor did the person ask for your hand in marriage. And the comment was, well, they had parental problems too with their parents. And then I had some problems with my parents. So you see, you just brought two people together that already have parental issues with their mother and their father. And without asking or getting counseling, they just came together. And they
Not
came
good.
together with um, no covering of any kind that I know of. Someone
Yes.
very close and very dear to us. And it's like, if you marry a man that cannot come to your father, if your father is alive and you're a daughter and he loves you, and that your father is in your life, and maybe you and your father don't have the best relationship, but if a man who wants to marry you can't come to your father, that's a telltale sign right there in your
Yes.
marriage.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
I say to you, sisters, if you have a father in your life of any kind, it may not be the best relationship, it may be a wonderful, blessed relationship, but if you are considering marrying someone that cannot come to your father and ask for your hand in marriage, that's a disrespect to you. Even if you've been married 15 million times and he's the 15th husband, he still needs to come to daddy if daddy is still alive and
Yes.
say, I want to have your daughter's hand in marriage. It's respect, it's a
Yes.
covering for
Yes.
that father to give the blessing. The marriage still may not turn out that well, but there is accountability. There is a covering to say, I think Tony Evans one time, he said when Priscilla and Jerry would get in an argument and she would come home, and Pastor Tony Evans would have a conversation. He said, well, I think you need to go back home. Like,
I heard a sermon where he talked about that.
it's like, Priscilla, she feisty, right? And so, he would hear her out and everything, and he was like, I think you need to go. Think you need to go back home,
Yeah.
unless the person, if he feels they're in danger. But it's like, oh, you
Right.
guys are having an argument, and okay, you need to go back home to Jerry. He said, and that's the importance of that husband and that father having a conversation and understanding who a man knows another man.
And I think because you would have to ask yourself why. Why didn't he ask for your hand in marriage? You can call it old fashioned, but I think there are some things in place to protect us. I'd like to welcome Deidre Bass. Thank you so much for tuning in, Deidre. Yeah,
She's a good friend of mine.
I think we have to stick with a lot of the old ways were there, like I said, for our protection. So I will go into my next question, Angela. Why build on faith and not fairy tales? I was one of those, guilty. This whole fairy tale nonsense. You know, you think it's like the knight on the shining horse coming to your rescue. You're going to have this wonderful fairy tale life. He's going to do everything to make you happy, and that's just not reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason why we can't build on fairy tale, because it's a fairy tale. And one of the things when I meet with my couples, I just met with a couple Saturday morning. I had a meeting Saturday morning, and then earlier this week. And I had a conversation with a couple on Wednesday that I spoke with, and I shared some things with them, and I saw their eyes buck open like deer in a headlight. And they're the sweetest couple, and I'm happy to marry them. But they like, oh, like I shared things with them that they needed to know as a married couple, and not the fairy. He's a handsome young man and she's a beautiful, gorgeous girl. And they're just so beautiful together. And I believe that they're going to make it and they're going to be
Yes.
okay. But when you think about how handsome and attractive he is and how beautiful she is, and they're young, it's fairy tale. It's like, oh, she's gonna make a beautiful bride, and we're already living together, and we're all the things. They were so lovely, but that won't sustain because
It won't.
that it won't sustain. The fairy
It
tale doesn't
won't.
sustain for these reasons. Because I put in the book, when I think about my husband and I who got married 28 years ago, sometimes we look at each other and we say, we don't even recognize each other anymore because you gain weight. Um, Things happen in life. Sometimes death takes place on his side or her side that affects who you are. Your goals to be something when you first got married may shift and change. And so if you go off of the fairy tales as things change, then you don't have anything to stand on.
You'll be disappointed every
You
day of
you
your
you'll be
life.
disappointed, and you're gonna go through the disappointment, but that's when you have to course correct. That's when you have to
Yes.
reset, and you have to go back to, wait a minute, we're in a marriage now, and I can't just walk out the door because you've gained 50 pounds. There is a news reporter, you probably have seen it and heard, Chanel, I think she was on one of the, and her husband just passed from
I
brain
read about
cancer.
it. Yes.
They are a young, beautiful couple. Who knew? When you
Right.
go into a marriage, you don't know what it's going to bring. What's going to come with this marriage? And so a fairy tale marriage means, oh, he has brain cancer, I'm out. I can't
Mhm.
deal with it. A fairy tale marriage means that, you know, I can't continue. I think you said something earlier. I can't continue to live like this. Some people, I'm just going to be honest, you can't live with. I'm never here
It's
to
true.
say stay in something that doesn't work, but I'm here to say stay committed to the covenant. And
If you stay
I
committed to
know
the,
that
but
sounds
it's
crazy.
it's the truth though. I think when you go in knowing that this is a commitment, not just to the spouse, but to God, I think you understand that you may have a fight, there may be a disagreement, but you still try to work it out. Whether
Mhm.
there's weight gain or whatever it is, I think if two people are committed, because I think it takes two both people to be committed. And I
Yes.
think you can work it out, but without that commitment, it's not going to happen. So I think before going into marriage, if you know that you are not cut out for this kind of life, I said it earlier, don't do it.
Yeah.
Someone may be brokenhearted. When I think back to, and I've known of a few women who were jilted at the altar, and that's humiliating, it's hurtful, but that person did you a favor at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your take on that?
So yeah, I just want to go back to my notes here when we talk about, unlike a legal contract, which is based on the mutual benefits and can
Yes,
be broken if terms aren't met. And a marriage covenant is about unconditional love, faithfulness,
yes,
and mutual devotion, regardless of the circumstances. We want to be happy in our
of
marriage.
course.
We want to be happy. We want to feel the love. We want to feel the joy. We want to be able to enjoy holding the hands and, going to the movies or enjoying each other's company. That all comes with the that all comes with what you've gone through together.
Yes.
That's that firm foundation that we can hold hands and we can love on each other because we went through this together or we went through that together. And that's what makes the holding hands and the enjoying each other's company and living a long life together as a couple. It comes with work. I may
Yes,
have
it
said that
does.
in the book, that
It
it
comes
comes
with
with
work.
work. Someone very, very close to me, and I'll just say it, my sister, she often always says, I just didn't want to do the work. She was married before I had children, but
Yes.
it's like when you get to be an adult and you realize that you have to be honest and say, I don't want to do that type of work. And it is okay.
Yeah.
It is okay to not want to do the work, and you make the choice. I'm going to be a single man or I'm going to be a single woman.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think we've come to that now because we've learned so much more about the responsibility of
Yes.
marriage and a covenant really
Yes.
means.
Right. And I think it's better to be honest with yourself. I mean, hey, at the end of the day, you don't want to put in the work, and marriage is work at the end of the
Yeah,
day. So if
yeah,
you know you're not willing to do it, then it's marriage is definitely not for you.
yeah, and it's
Let's talk,
okay.
and that's fine. At the end of the day, there's no law saying that you have to be married and you have to have children. It's personal
Yeah.
choice,
And not to cut you off, but Paul
No
talked
problem.
about it. He said, I'd rather you be like me and commit yourself to the Lord 100%. He
Yes.
didn't say it, but just paraphrasing,
Yes.
because when you are in a marriage, your commitment and covenant is to your spouse first
Yes.
and together to God.
Yes.
But
And
when
then
you're
think
not
about
married,
it.
you can have that relationship with God. And
Yes.
it's great when you have a relationship in your marriage where your husband or wife honors that. Hey, my husband will tell you in a minute, if you're fasting, God comes first, honey. God comes first. If I say, honey, I'm going to be fasting next week, for he never gets in the way. Or if
Yes.
he's going to be doing, I never get in the way. But that's not every marriage.
Right. Right.
And it
Right.
takes getting to a
And
matured
that's true.
level.
That is so true. And the thing is, I think we have to think about children because I mean, many couples when they get married, they do intend to have children. What kind of example of marriage are we setting for our children? You have to think about these things. Are we, will we be scarring our children for life? You know, will this go from generation to generation? It's like
Yeah.
just because we grew up in a negative situation, I like my parents are divorced and it wasn't the best marriage. So
Hmm.
I went into marriage expecting turmoil, to be honest with you. And I
Yeah.
saw the red flags before I got married, but
Yeah.
I saw turmoil as the norm because
Yes.
that's what
That's
I
good.
grew up with,
Yes.
So these are the things that we have to think about. Now, the next thing I would like to talk about is finances.
Sure.
This is one that gets a lot of couples. This is a deal breaker for so many marriages. Why is
Sure.
it important to be on the same page when it comes to finances?
Sure. I want to answer that, but I want to go back and something you just said, and that was in my
Okay,
notes,
sure,
that
sure.
when we say we're getting married and it's like, oh, you're going to be on a ball and chain, or now you're going to be. So when you say ball and chain, that's what you're going to have, a ball and
Yes,
chain, because
it's
that's what you
true.
spoke. You spoke ball and chain.
You're
So that's what
expecting
you're
that.
going to have. Or you gonna be on lock? Oh, you on lockdown now? You gonna be on lockdown because that's what you spoke about your marriage, and that comes from generational pathological
It's
behavior.
true.
I just wanted to speak to that,
No, and
like
I'm
you
glad,
said.
and thank you for saying that.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about finances. So in my book, I talk about this because this is part of uh my experience in that, and I'll just give my. So when we think about finances, most of us come from different financial backgrounds. You may marry someone who is wealthy, who understands money, who comes from a place where they have had to manage money. You may marry someone, and this is male or female, who's never paid a bill in their life, who has never managed money, who have been a person that has not been a good steward over their money. You may have married someone who had to be responsible since they was a little boy or a little girl to be responsible for their whole family coming up, who may be the oldest child or maybe the youngest child, and have had to manage money and not necessarily educated about money, but just had to manage the household. And
Yes.
so those are just a few examples. So when you bring two people together, most of the time they don't have the same ideology about finances. Um, I'll give myself and my husband as an example. My husband understood that being in the military for 20 years and having a family and having to manage his money, that it was stretched from the 15th through the 30th,
Yes.
the first and the
I
15th, or
was
the
a
15th
military
and the
wife. I remember
30th.
that 15th and 30th. Yeah.
He managed money. However, at the same time, in our dating, he always blessed me and showed me, as someone that he was pursuing, that he always wanted to love on and give good gifts to whatever his budget or ability
Yes.
was. But my husband could manage. On the other hand, I was a daddy's girl, and I could get paid and take a whole check and blow it and make it for another 2 weeks because I had my backing of my father. So I come into a marriage with two totally opposite mindsets about managing money.
Yes.
So many people come into the marriage with different ideas about, some want to live for the now and some want to live for later. Some people are savers. They want to save all their money, or they come from a family that was that lacked, or there was what's the word I want to use? There was lack, and there was money didn't, they just didn't have it.
Yes.
So now that they're grown and they're working, they never want to go back to that. And sometimes you marry someone who works themselves to death because they want to run as far away from poverty as they possibly can. So here are all the different situations when it comes to money. You may marry someone who had 10 credit cards and who was in debt and know what it's like to come out of that debt. You may marry someone who never had owned a credit card.
Yes.
Someone who doesn't know about credit and what does that mean. And then you have someone who says, I've had an 800 credit score since I was in my 20s, and I do everything to protect that. And someone may say, well, I don't even know what credit means. Never had to use it. Cash is king for me. I always use cash. And they may be in a place that cash works for them. But when it
Yes.
comes to purchasing a home, or you can't just come up and say, here's $50,000. There is a threshold of like, where did this $50,000 come from?
Right.
Or just the understanding the just understanding finances. So it is a big, huge.
You have to be on the same page. I mean, I think That's an
And are
area.
we talking about that when we dating? No.
No,
He
and
taking me
that,
out and he taking me
yes,
out and all I know is I'm going to restaurants and I'm eating good or he's buying me a gift or vice versa or she's paying for my meals or she's a lawyer and she has a good job or he has a good job and he's driving a 50 $60,000 car and or vice versa or he's driving a hoopty or she's whatever. And when you come together, now you have all of these dynamics of what does that look
because
like
you know
together.
sometimes you're finding out this person has a lot of debt. This
Yeah,
person has terrible credit. This
yeah,
person is driving a very nice car but can barely pay the insurance or keep
yeah,
gas in the car,
yeah.
right?
Deprivation was the word I wanted to use. Deprivation,
Yes,
lack and deprivation. And that could mean two things for a person that has come from deprivation. They may save, they may hoard because
yes,
they come from deprivation. Someone who comes from lack, they may not, they may, let's use the word, maybe stingy. Or they
yes,
may be the opposite and say, hey, because I come from a place of deprivation and lack, I want to now buy. Every time I'm at the mall, I'm in Louis Vuitton or I'm buying because I couldn't do this when I was younger. So it could go either way. And so
yes.
that's why finances is such a clash
You
because you,
have to have these conversations. I mean, some people believe in, like you were talking about, designer gear and all of that. Some people don't mind doing thrift shopping. You have to have a meeting of the minds. I can tell you that
meeting of the
that was
mind.
a source of like so much stress, finances. My ex-husband was terrible with money, and we would have this, it was a constant argument, and I remember like early in the marriage, there were things that were happening with the finances, and it was always he'll do better, but he never did.
But you
And
know what you can't do what you don't know to do.
but that's the thing. If the red flags were there before the marriage,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
not like I didn't know, but I just, sometimes we think if I love this person enough, if I do this, if I do that, I'm going to change that person. People only change if they want to. And
yeah,
I think you have to have that desire to change,
yeah,
because if you see that, okay, if I do this, this is a result of it, but you keep on doing it, at the end of the day, I think that couples really have to have that where I think at least once a week, or
yeah,
sit down and talk about
yeah.
what's going on financially.
That's what I
What
talked
can
about
we
in the
do?
book, things to
Yeah,
do. Like
what
you
can
said, a
we do?
guide. Here's some
Yes,
guides. Here's some things
right.
to really do.
You
And I
cover
know
everything. You cover everything in the book. It's short. It's like that, and that's why I'm telling you, don't think you'll be reading this a year and a day. No, but it's filled with wisdom and it gets right to the point. And I'm glad that you did decide to cover finances, because I think we need to stop burying our heads in the sand. I think that you can't, once you get married and you see that this person is terrible with money, well, weren't there signs before you got married,
yeah,
So
yeah,
I think it's important, because at the end of the day, if this person has a low credit score, there's no savings, I'm not going to tell you not to get married, but I would tell you to think about it,
yeah,
or maybe say, let's wait another year or two so
yeah.
that we can get it together before we get married. I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, to be honest, this is wedding season, and a lot of my colleagues, who are posting and they're doing two and three weddings a day and married. And this is, see, I'm actually in the process of building my website. I'm in the process of being certified in a few marriage coaching um, certifications, and one of the certifications is assessing. So I'm taking the time to pull back to like, this is a ministry for me. And it's like, Lord, you have called me. Yeah, I could be out there, marrying, but everything that we're talking about, I could marry and bip bam. Oh, this was beautiful. This was and baby, let me tell you, I love officiating. The weddings. I love the ceremonies. I love all the beautiful things. I love the love. But God has called me. This is ministry, Angela. This is couples who are on, not that their blood is on your hand, but it's like you want to make sure that when you marry people, that couples, that they know all the nuances and
Yeah,
about the
yeah, it's
finances.
important.
There are 5 things that I share with a couple doing my coaching when they haven't got married yet. Do you all have life insurance? And it's like, do you have your healthcare proxy in place? Do you have a will, trust, power, attorney? Do you know each other's credit? There's one more that I have a sheet and it's like, oh, no, we don't.
Those
Well,
are great questions.
these are things that I want you all to work on the first 6 months of your marriage. And here's why. Because if you both work and you have a accidental or policy or something through your job, you know how our jobs always give us, and we have to put in a beneficiary. If something is now to happen to your husband or your wife and you haven't changed that out, mama or daddy or whoever you assign that to, that beneficiary now goes to them. And that's fine if you want to keep it. But now you're saying, I do to this person. Now you're sitting in front of me saying you want to get married, but you haven't thought that you need to change that. Oh, yes, ma'am, you're right. Do you have a will, a trust, and power of attorney already in place? And you're going to need to now look at that differently together. You want a living trust that if you have a property or she has a property, if she has a home, you have a home. What are your plans? Are you guys going to keep your homes? These are things you want. And they're like, yeah. Now, some people have already have had these conversations. If something was to happen to him or her, is her mama going to be the one to say, no, don't pull the plug? And you don't have any authority as her husband. And it may not even be that severe. It may be that the wife or the husband for the moment can't make any decisions if there's some type of sickness. And they're like, we haven't even thought of any of that. But they can sit and say, oh, we've been dating for 5 years, or we've been living together for 3 years now. Because these are the questions I ask. And it's
But
like when I
it's
bring up
real.
this financial stuff, it's like, oh,
It's real. It's real. And let's talk about if there are children that were there before you met them. This person may have to pay child support. You know, how will will these kids be able to come and visit without fights being involved?
yeah,
How will
yeah,
these children be treated?
yeah,
Will these other children be treated like second class citizens compared to kids born in the
yeah.
union?
Blended families. I'm
Yes.
already in my second book. I'm already in my second volume.
I'm I'm looking forward to it, Angela, because we have to talk about these things. I
Yeah,
mean, marriage is
blended
not a
families.
magic wand. It's not. You have
Yeah,
to have these conversations. So,
yeah,
Angela, I'll go into my next question because I have a few more for you.
yeah.
Why do couples grow apart?
Sure. So couples grow apart for many reasons because um, that's chapter 5 in the book. It says, growing apart, drifting hearts, different lives. Because life is lifing. And there are many reasons why couples drift apart. Sometimes it's work schedule. Sometimes it's children, as you say. Sometimes women may have children and go into postpartum. Sometimes long work schedules. So you have to be really into. That's why I say God has got to be in every
He
marriage
does.
in order for you to sustain. Um, those are just two reasons why um, couples seem to drift apart. Sometimes you find that you feel like you don't have things in common and you don't know or have the tools or are equipped with how do we identify what we do together and how do we make that work. And so over time, especially with technology, you see someone sitting at a table at a restaurant, and everyone is on their phone,
And it's the truth, which is
and
sad.
everyone's connected to something else or someone else, and not
And I think
literally having
I I think
time.
it's sad. I think it's so sad. Hi mom. Thank you for tuning in.
Hi, mom.
So I'm going to tie in a few questions together. I want to talk about, because I think this is where we start to grow apart, when there's no longer love and respect. You know, I
Yeah,
remember at church we did a was a course, but it was love and respect. And I remember the gentleman saying that when a woman does not feel loved, she will not show you respect. And if
correct.
a man
Yeah,
does not feel respected, he will not give love. So it's
true.
like a never ending
That is so.
cycle,
Mhm.
and it's like, I think that's where couples start to,
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons why we grow
yeah,
apart. What's your opinion on that?
yeah. I broke down in that lack of communication. Some
Yes.
people don't. Some people. I know people who have said that they come from a home where their mother and father didn't talk. They never heard their mother and father have communication. And so you marry someone that doesn't have communication skill sets, or you marry someone who's not a big talker, unmet emotional needs. He's not meeting my needs, or vice versa. Busy and separate lives. Someone's going to school to be a lawyer, or someone is has a hobby. He likes to golf all the time, or, you
But
know,
we have to make, I do believe we have to make time for each other. Let me ask you this.
yeah.
How
Oh, gosh, yes,
important
we have
is
to make time for each
how
other.
important
Absolutely.
how important is communication and honest communication? Because I think if I'm feeling a certain way about a situation, I should be free to come to you, approach you with respect, of course, but to tell you, you know what, i'm I'm feeling unhappy in the marriage, I'm feeling lonely, I feel that you neglect me, I feel that when we have these honest conversations, and if we are mature about it, I believe that we can turn things around. I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's one of the things I talk about in the book, of how we even communicate to share something that is not pleasing to us. And some of the exercises that I talk about is just that when I come to my spouse, that I don't want to say, you such and
Right.
such. You want to say, I feel unheard. I have told my husband many times, honey, I'm not happy. I don't feel happy. What I found out, it was that it was other things that was going on in my life. And so you have to talk to through it, and not take offense and say, well, what's going on that you don't feel happy? It might be, well, you know what? It's because I don't feel that you are really, engaged with me, or I don't feel that you're really hearing me of what my needs are, what my wants are. Sometimes the unhappiness is coming from within you. When I tell you marriage and the covenant is work, sometimes you have to go within and say, why am I feeling unhappy? And you have to do the work within. And so sometimes you find out that it's not because of your spouse that you feel
But
unhappy.
would you agree that your spouse should be your safe space, where you should be able to go and have that conversation? Because I think a loving spouse can direct you back to where you need to be without any judgment. help
Yeah,
you see, like you said, you find sometimes the unhappiness, it's on your end, not on your
yeah.
spouse's.
Yeah, yeah. And you find out that some things that are undone in your own life. You've married now, and all the frills and all the dresses, all the gifts, all the things have stopped. Now we're a year and two, and now I feel deflated because now I have to go back to, oh, you know what? I realize I haven't finished tying the knot on certain things, and I've brought these things into my marriage. To answer your question, if my husband was sitting here about your question that we should be able to go to our spouse about everything, my husband would say you should marry your best friend.
Yes, I remember him saying that when you
Yeah,
guys were on
yeah,
before.
yeah,
And I love that he said that. I think that spouses there should be a friendship there.
yeah.
There should be a level of friendship in that connection.
Yeah,
I
my
have
husband, yeah, you're so not cutting you off, but breathe that. And you hear couples who there's certain things they don't say to their husband, and
and that's sad.
there's
I
certain
think
things
that's
I
sad.
say. Me and my husband, everything, everything. If we want to, if we want
Yes.
to, there,
Yes.
we want to,
But
um,
that's how it should be. I think the
yeah,
connection should be deep enough that no matter what it is, as long as it's not like with criticism and to hurt,
yeah,
I think you can have that honest conversation to get you back on the right track, which is leading to another big one, intimacy. I think a lot of couples, especially later on in the marriage, they struggle in this area. Now, intimacy is not necessarily sex, in my opinion. Now, I do know that some men later in life, they may have erectile dysfunction, whatever. For some
mhm,
women, their sex drive may
same,
diminish.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I think that's where communication comes in. What are forms of intimacy that we can bring into the marriage, right? That may get us back to that point where we want to have that sexual contact. I mean, how about holding hands, kissing, hugging? I mean, what's your opinion on that?
Dancing in the kitchen.
Yes,
uh,
yes,
but that all comes from the friendship that comes from
yes,
the having that friendship. And
yes.
there are times that my husband and I have gone 2 or 3 days. I'm on podcasts, I'm working on a book, I'm talking to my Zoom calls with couples or back to back. I'm working a 40-hour week. My husband's doing some things in the yard, and 2 or 3 days have passed. And it's like, whoo, we're passing each other like ships in the night. And we'll say, I think we need to go out and get something to eat. Not that we're not eating here, but it's like, okay, we need to step out of this whirlwind of everything that we're doing. And I think it's very important that we see our spouse in a different setting from always just in the
And
house.
that's one of the questions I have, like how important is having a date night?
Yeah, yeah. So Friday was our wedding anniversary, and we didn't do anything Friday because I worked and we knew Friday, but yesterday we got all dolled up. I got dressed. We went to a winery, something that we had never done, one that's right up the street from us. And it was just so lovely, just the classical music, a good meal. And we just was holding hands and saying, it's 28 years, but we were saying that, you know, it's been good, and we're happy today, and we're enjoying, and we laughed and we had a good time, and we did some fun stuff there. And it's just not the one time. I have to say, Bree, that my husband, that's why I had to write about not just my experience but other people's experience.
Yes,
And what here are some of the things to do to because you have men and women who are homebodies, who are introverts. My husband is an eagle. My husband soars and he oversees and he covers and he provides. And I'm a butterfly. I today I'm doing this and tomorrow I'm doing this. And so I have to deal with this hovering And he has to deal with, okay, today she's doing ice cream, tomorrow she's marrying somebody, the next day. So we have two different ways, and they're both beautiful ways. The eagle
Yes.
is
You
beautiful.
complement each other.
And the
You complement
butterfly
each other.
is, that's what he was attracted to, the butterfly. And I say to a couple that the very thing that you were attracted to is the very thing that will get on your nerves
Yes.
in the marriage.
Yes.
So to your point about intimacy, we can stay on that. You're right. It's not, because after a while, the actual act of sex and tossing each other around and all that, that fades because you just physically don't have that I'm just grown people talk. You just
Yes. Yes.
physically
No, it's
don't
no,
have
it's
that
it's
type of
true.
stamina 10 years later or 5 years later after 4 or 5 kids, or or 2 or 3 kids, and your body type changes. And like I said, you are two people. I talked about this, Bree. One flesh thriving separately. So while you're one flesh in a marriage, you're still thriving for your own individual goals in life.
Yes. Yes.
So when we talk about intimacy, I love how you said that we still, I know somebody, I have a nephew, he still opens and closes the door for my niece.
That's beautiful.
They've been married 20 years. Their kid,
That's
they're
beautiful.
longer than that because one of the twins are 22 or something. And he still opens
But
the
you
door
know what that is, and
for
see
her.
what I think a lot of men don't understand is like sometimes before you make love to a woman, you have to make love to her mind.
And
And
that's
I
right.
think those
We're
little
emotional.
actions, right? These little
Nurture.
actions, they do something. You're deposited in that bank, I mean, it makes a difference.
So I understand what you're saying, Bree, but every man is not equipped that way. And just as you said about a man, every woman does not know how to accept love.
Well, see that these are the
And every
things.
woman does not know that opening the door for me, I need, some women like, I don't need
Like
that.
it's
Or
right, and which I think that in itself is sad. Now, I have listened when I'm here to tell you, I was not married to that individual that opened doors and did things like that. But I think it's nice. I think it's nice to experience something like that. But
yes,
that's where I think communication comes in. Because if that's the kind of thing that I think if we would like that, I think we should be able to say it to our spouse. And
sure,
and I think compromise. But the fact that your nephew is still doing that, I think he's showing that he values his spouse. I think the
absolutely.
fact that you and your husband went out to celebrate your anniversary, it shows that you value each other. But I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
you also understand it's creating the atmosphere, right?
sure,
Creating the
sure,
atmosphere to continue to have that spark because
sure.
we can't just not do anything,
Right.
and I think we have to work at it. And I
It's
think if you're a homebody, I think you can still do a romantic dinner at home. There are things that we can do, but we have to be intentional.
but very intentional is the word. And Bree, a lot of people don't come equipped. And
It's
that's where
true.
you have to get the coaching, the training. When you
Yes.
said this book at the very beginning is for couples who are getting married and couples, but let me tell you, basic stuff in this book is for people who have been married for years
Years. Let me tell listen, Angela, I'm not going to
and
lie
not
to you.
doing any of this or
This
not.
book, it's not, as you can see, it's not very thick, but a wealth of information. And I think you have to have the desire to be better,
The
right?
tools and the
The
equipment you
tools.
do. And that's where God plays a part because some of us are just not equipped. We don't have the tools. We didn't come with that. We know she looked good, he looked good. Oh, we're gonna get married. Oh, let's get married. Okay. we get together, all of the things, but in the covenant, now the work begins. And some
I
people
agree.
come and they're not equipped. And that's where people like myself and others, the Word of God, and coaching and counseling has now changed for the better. Because when
Yes,
we
I
think about
agree.
our pastors years ago who would give us counseling, I'm going to say this and not be offensive, not meaning to be offensive, but sometimes counseling from our pastors many years ago could sometimes come from a very misogynistic place.
Yes, I would agree. I would agree.
On the other hand, I heard something Cece Wine said the other day, just blessed my soul. She says, God is a God of order, and that at the end of the day, my husband is my covering. And
Yes.
how the world has made us, oh, we equal, we both kings, we're both queens, but that's not God's order. Even though we are both, but God still has order.
Yes,
And
I would
when
agree.
we think about how the marriages from years ago who have last 30 and 40 and 50 years, I can't say there's always been perfect. I don't know the inside, but some of those are blessings of just the order of God.
Yes. Yes, I would definitely agree. And to be honest with you, you made a great point. Some people don't come into marriage equipped with certain things. But at the end of the day, I don't think it should be an excuse with all the knowledge that is out there. Look, your book, like I said, it's not a long read, but packed with
No.
a lot of wisdom. Look, this book is an investment in your marriage, right? And Angela is not paying me to say this. I'm just telling
I
you
didn't
from
even know
what
you
I
had the
read.
book.
I'm telling you, I read the book and I am like it was a blessing to
Thank
read
you.
this book
Thank
because
you.
I feel better equipped. I
Yeah,
feel better equipped. Like I said, I wish I would have read something like this before I got married. So
all of us.
right. I mean, honestly, because I think that we have to invest in ourselves and
Yeah,
invest in the things that are important to us. So date night and intimacy, if these are areas where we're struggling, let's sit down and just have that conversation. Now, I
yeah,
have to ask you this question, Angela. Couples, I do believe in couple time, that designated time set aside for couples, for the couple. But what do you think about a girls' night, a guys' night? And then sometimes we may get together with our other, couple friends. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
yeah. So for me, it's all of that.
Yes,
For me,
I
it's all of
agree.
that. For me, it's all of
I
that.
agree. I
You know,
totally
I
agree.
go out with the girls. I got, that I don't know if Deidre is still on here or not, but I go. That's a no brainer in my relationship.
Would
In my
you say it's a
relationship,
red flag if you meet someone and they never want you to hang out with your friends? It's just about them. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
well, so here it just depends because for my husband personally, he wouldn't want to be hanging out with me, Deirdre, and Vanetta going out to
Right,
eat.
right, right. He doesn't have a problem with you going.
No, like y'all girl. But on the other hand, he'll say, "Hey, such and such has invited me to such and such place, and baby, you're welcome to go." And I might say, "Oh, same thing. I'm good. I don't need to go there. Baby." Sometimes I encourage because my husband is a homebody. You go out and enjoy yourself, honey. But a lot of times he said, he'll come back. Oh, it was great. The food, baby. I wish you would have been with me. I got to take you back to that place, or
That's
we
great.
had a good time, or it may be I got a chance to talk to my friend and he shared some things with me. But we have a healthy relationship,
And
and
that's
that makes
what
the
it's about.
difference.
That
So
makes a
my book
difference.
is more about if the relationship isn't healthy,
Yes.
you know um we never, my husband and I have never had that you going and I can't go. But you think about a
Right.
lot of marriages are worldly marriages. And they met the sister in the club and they met him
Yes.
on the,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
in the, so we have to be very broad because every marriage didn't come out of church. There's people
That's
who were
true.
not believers. There's people who did meet in the club or in the Safeway. I mean, I'm saying Safeway, but in the grocery store, or they met in the park. She had a dog, he had a dog. Their dog started playing. Oh, I like you, you like me. We kind of, oh, you find out. So there are all different types of reasons where couples come together and
Yes.
again have to learn. Let me say this. There are just as many men who are walking around hurt
True. That's true.
as women
That is
from
true.
previous relationships, from my wife left me, or there was infidelity, or my wife passed, or from a sickness, and now I don't trust someone, or my wife took all my money or something. We tend to lean on the woman's side a lot,
Now,
but
you know what? I think you have it on both sides, but
yes,
I do believe if you are afraid, like, I talk about healing all the time. Take the time to heal. And really, if you decide to get involved with someone, take the time to get to know them, which leads to my next question: chemistry.
chemistry.
How important is chemistry? How important is
chemistry
it, Angela?
chemistry to me is very important, but we
Yes,
have we have nationalities where you don't have a choice,
yes,
where, and even still today, where thank you, honey, thank you so much for that, where you are married off because the fathers or the families have made deals and
yes,
covenants of their
yeah,
own.
yes,
And sometimes now you're marrying this young man or this boy or this man, and you're young or vice versa, and you don't even get an opportunity. And that's where they say, oh, you learn to love someone. It may be someone that has all the things, all the qualities that you need. All your friends may have approved. All your friends have said, don't let him go or let her go, but yet you don't have that chemistry.
yes.
And some people say, I will learn to love her or learn to love him. So for me, chemistry would definitely need to be important. I don't know what it's like to say, I'll learn to love
Well, I think chemistry is
someone.
important. Personally,
You're
I
like, no,
want
honey, chemistry.
chemistry. Now,
Let's take a poll. Is your audience there? What do they say? What do they think? Let's get them
chemistry.
involved.
I personally, I like the idea of chemistry. So, Angela, my last question for the evening, and I have to say, I've really enjoyed this
I always
conversation.
enjoy you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
What are legit deal breakers for ending a marriage? I know like we talked about it earlier. You can't say, well, I'm bored with this person, or they let themselves go, or whatever it is. I think if we were, being committed to the covenant, it can't be for superficial reasons. So, what are legit deal breakers for ending a marriage?
Well, I don't know if there are any biblical legitimate deal breakers. I don't
Yes.
recall that there's anywhere in the Bible. Let's see. Hello, great topic. Love this conversation.
Thank you, Sophia.
Hi, Sophia. While we have Sophia on the line, maybe she just come in. Ask her about the chemistry. Does she need to have the chemistry?
Sophia, what do you think about chemistry? If you meet someone, is chemistry important to you?
They have all the things that they all the things that you need. Everything works. Everything's good. Everything's great. But I just don't feel, you know, attracted to this person in that way, although they have all the things. Is chemistry important to you? Maybe someone to chime in while we're talking about it. So, but I will say that I don't believe, and I put this in my book, I don't, and I have scripture for that.
You saw something, I think, on page 60,
Yeah, about
Proverbs
domestic
22:3.
abuse.
The
And there have
prudent
been
sees
people, yes,
danger
for
and
me,
hides
chemistry
himself.
is critical. Amen.
That's right, Sophia. Yeah, you have here where it says the prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it.
Mm,
You
yeah,
know, that one, I felt that one because I know I was in that situation, and I felt that I did what was right for myself and right for my children.
children.
Yeah, because I do believe whether it's emotional abuse or physical abuse, abuse is abuse at the end of the
Yeah,
day. And I,
verbal abuse,
yes,
mental
yes,
abuse.
yes,
It's tough. It's
yes,
hard. And I put in there, seek wise counsel, Proverbs
yes,
15:22, confront with biblical truth, Ephesians 5:25, encourage accountability,
yes,
James 5:16, pray but take action, because at the
yes,
end of the day, and I talk about leaving may be necessary. And
yes.
leaving may be necessarily doesn't mean a divorce.
Right. Some people can, that could be the lesson they learn, they try, they'll learn from it and they will, decide, okay, I'll change my behavior. But
Yeah.
what if that person decides I am not going to change my behavior? They come back
Yeah.
and it's the same old thing, you
Yeah,
know?
because you may have been in a situation where you have married someone who has anger management issues, who
Yes.
deal with substance abuse, who have mental challenges, and you find out later on, like we talked about at the beginning, that everybody brings their representative. Sometimes me and my husband used to, I'm like, where's that representative at? Where's the representative I met 10 or 15 years ago? We
Yes.
joke and play about that. We all bring our representative, and then sometimes there's very serious issues with the person that you married, and you really don't realize it until you've married them. However, I always believe that there are flags that we override. And I
Yes.
once heard Ayanna Vicent say, God gives us something in our belly. There's something that tells us, but we're so busy looking at going down the aisle in the white dress, looking at the picket fence and the house and the children, and having this event, which all a wedding is an event.
Yes.
And so we get so fixated on that. And the thing that's inside that's gnawing at us,
That's so true.
override it. And it's like we'll deal with it when we get on the other side of this event.
Yeah.
And it can cause us very serious consequence.
I
I
definitely.
remember the first time I was hit by my then abuser. Many years ago, I was only like 16 or 17, so I'm talking about something many, many years ago,
Yes.
and it shocked me. It came out of nowhere, and you're in shock, and you're trying to figure out what just happened. And it starts out with, "Oh, baby, I'm sorry," because you got in an argument or something like. Plus, I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
But then it continued, and it escalated to a point that I almost lost my life. And this is not trying to make my story seem so dramatic, like people say.
I think
It,
that's the
it
experience of everyone.
really,
Yeah.
if it wasn't for the grace of God, I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you, because it was like a Lifetime movie where they hid in a house under a bed, and I thought I was in the house by
Oh my
myself.
gosh.
And at some point,
That's
I turned around in
traumatizing.
the house, and there they were standing. This is many years ago. Something very tragic happened to me. And if it wasn't for my father wrapping back around and coming to the house and trying to get in to save my life from someone literally trying to choke me to death. So I try not to bring my experience in this book, but use practical and logical and factual what should you do. Now, on the other hand, I would say for me, that's a deal breaker for me.
Definitely a deal breaker.
When you put your hands on me, men and women,
Yes.
because there are women will fight a man and beat a man up
Yeah.
and fight and hateful and
Yeah.
mean. Abuse is abuse.
Yes.
So if it was coming from me, that would definitely be my legitimate deal breaker. It's so hard on a family. It's so hard on children.
It is.
It's dangerous. And we know domestic violence, people have lost their lives. Women and men have lost their lives. So I would say that is, you saw how I wrote that in the
Yes.
book, that I
Yes.
nicely, not nicely,
I'm glad that you included that because I think it's just a reality for
yeah,
those who went in blindly and did not really take the time to, look at the big picture. So I do think that's very important. You
yeah.
know, I think you
Some-
covered everything that needs to be covered, you know, going into a marriage. So I'd like to ask you, what are your closing thoughts? I can tell you from my perspective, especially I was married for over 25 years, and I can tell you I shouldn't have been married for more than 4. I was miserable for a long time. I can't tell anyone that, oh, I enjoyed marriage.
yeah,
My children is what kept me, and I'm thankful for the 2 children that were born in that union. But it's like now that I've been on this healing journey and I've really gotten a chance to get to know myself, I have
it's like,
expectations now, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. And I'm so sorry to hear that. And I really mean that. And Bree, I'm so passionate about this thing called marriage because
Yes, it's a beautiful thing.
it's a beautiful thing, but a horrible marriage is a horrible
It's
thing.
like a prison sentence. That's the only
Woo!
thing I can compare it to. But you know what? What has helped me, Angela, and I've said it on several episodes, because I know the love of God.
Be-
I now know how to love myself. And because I love myself, I'm not willing to compromise. I'm not going to say, oh, I'm 61 years old, so let me take whatever comes my way. No, I know I will trust God in this whole process. And if I'm meant to be alone, hey, that's not the end of the world for me either,
but you're
because
not
I'm
alone. It's
enjoying
not
my
meant.
life.
Yeah,
When I say alone, you know
I
what
know what
I
you
mean,
mean.
right? Because
Yeah,
God, we have to, when we accept God's love, we're not going to settle. We're just not
yeah.
going to.
Yeah, I think the scripture tells us when a man finds a wife, so you're already a wife, but whether
Yes.
you're a wife and married or a wife, you're a
Yes.
wife, you're a bride to Christ,
Yes.
or you are a bride or a wife to a natural, being
Yes.
and God, both.
Yes. And
And
that's a beautiful way of looking at it,
yeah,
because I think, the way God loves us, he shows us how we're supposed to be loved.
yeah. We could talk about that. I share that in my book about Christ loving the church and how
Yes.
the
Yes.
man, you really can't do marriage, I don't think, without some type of spiritual guidance. I just,
Makes a difference.
it makes a difference. And I'm not saying, and hear me out to your audience. It just doesn't mean that if somebody is in the church, then they don't have any of these issues. No,
I'm
no,
glad you said that.
no. That that
I'm
that that,
I am
that,
glad
that
you
ain't
said
look,
that.
that ain't what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that.
But
I'm glad you
really
said that.
seeking God as a man or a woman to say, I think I've found the person that I love, that I want to live my life with according to God's way and his will. And what does that look like? And I want to be equipped and have the tools to do what I need to do according to the word. And it takes work.
Yes, it
Period. So
does.
don't run out and go think you're gonna get a little church man, because
No,
that,
that
that ain't
doesn't
the
mean anything. No,
answer.
tread
It
carefully.
has-
You really have to do the work. I think we have to be very prayerful about it.
yeah,
We have to
yeah,
trust God's divine timing. And at the end of the day, have a standard.
yeah. Have a
Know what you
standard.
want. Yes,
And
most
I believe for
definitely.
men and women, enjoy your life. Just enjoy your life.
Yes,
Just
yes,
enjoy your life.
I
There's so
agree.
many beautiful and amazing things that we can put our hands to in life.
Yes. I definitely agree with you on that. I can definitely say that, you know, when I got divorced, that's when I started doing things that I'd always wanted to do when I was married. I
Yeah.
wanted to go on a cruise ever since I was
And why
14.
didn't you do that when you was married?
That's the thing. I mentioned that I wanted to, but it's like when I got my divorce, that's when I started doing a lot of the things that I always wanted to do. So it's like, I embrace the happiness that God has brought my way. And, you know, I know there are a lot of women who feel incomplete without marriage, but I
Mhm.
think we have to be completed by God. If we feel completed in Christ, then I think that's when we know we're ready for marriage. Because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, a husband is not going to do for you what
Or
only
wife.
God can do, and a wife that only God can do.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Something you said, and I know you're ready to wrap up here.
Not rushing you.
There was something that I was going to say to something that you said, but it may come back to me. But I certainly enjoyed the fact that you allowed me to just surface. There's so much we can come back and take one topic and then really
Listen,
dive
whenever you're
into
ready
that
to
one
come back,
topic.
yes. Whenever
Yeah.
you're ready to come back, let me know because I'm serious. And I'm serious because I knew we were going to go over an hour.
Yeah.
That I knew. And like I
Yeah.
said, the book, and I'll say it again, it's short, but it's short and sweet, as they say. You get right
Yeah.
to the point. The book is filled with wisdom. I think this book is great for those who are about to get married, for those who are married. If you are struggling in your marriage, I think
Yeah.
this book is perfect. Sit down
Yeah.
and read a chapter to each other, ask each other questions. You have the little thing at the end of each chapter where they can answer questions and all of that. This
Yeah.
book, look, the book was not, I think if I remember correctly on Amazon, I think this was like $15 and
Yeah.
change. You know?
15.99 on
Yeah.
Amazon. And if you want to get the e-copy,
Yes.
it's 8.99.
Come
Mm-hmm.
on. That's
Yeah.
an investment in your
It's an
marriage.
investment. Yeah,
It's an
absolutely.
investment in your marriage. And I think for young women and for young men too, I think it's a good book to read because I think it gives you an idea of the expectations,
Yeah.
and if you're not able to live up to the covenant, then don't get married. You're not ready, and that's okay.
And it's okay. Yeah, it is okay. It is so okay.
It is. I mean, it
It's so
definitely
okay.
is because
Oh,
there's nothing worse than being miserable in a marriage.
yeah, one of the things that I was gonna say, oh yeah, I would never, and my husband and I both feel the same way. It's like
Yes.
I can't live with a woman that I got to be up on a rooftop because she's so eager. And I mean, we both agree that we would not want,
Yes.
we don't want to be miserable, you
Right.
know.
It's not worth it.
But one of the things that I was going to say, that when we think about, and I think I've shared this on your platform before, when I think about um, the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and the 30s, that women did not have the same rights. They couldn't vote, they couldn't purchase a home, they couldn't do anything without having a mister in their life. So you couldn't open a bank account. So our marriages now versus what marriages look like then were based on laws,
True.
and that you got married so that you could be taken care of, because the average woman could not necessarily go to college. Men went to
True.
college.
It's true.
And if I may say, it was a white male dominant here in America. The man went to work, the man went to college and got their education. Not that women didn't in those days, but you
Right,
were
right.
definitely more of a homemaker. And when I think it was one of those one of those where women went into the factories and start working, that
World War
began,
Two. Yes, during
yeah,
World
that
War
began. I
Two.
was like, one of them
Yes.
world wars where
Yeah.
women had
Yeah.
to, where women uh, were able to go out and work in the factories and help bring money in and things like that. But it was later on in life, a woman couldn't even vote and couldn't open a bank account. It's like,
Yeah.
where's your husband, ma'am? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
and this was
that's
this
true.
was
That's
the
true.
white woman.
Yeah.
This wasn't even the black woman.
Yeah.
This was, so women did not have rights, and
They
so
didn't. They didn't.
no,
There's
so
an episode of All in the Family where Edith wanted to take out a loan and they told her with her husband's signature. That was,
signature.
and this
That's
was
right.
in the
That's why I said,
70s.
where's your husband, ma'am?
Right. And this was in the 70s. And that
Yeah,
was a very good episode. So no, what you're saying is true.
yeah. So we
And
got
yeah,
married differently is the
yes,
point. We
it's
got
true.
married to be taken care of. We got married. So that's why we ran to our ancestors, married, and had to put up with a lot. There were
Yeah.
men who married and had a family down the street.
Yeah.
And had you here. And I mean, though that was the way of marriage. So
which is
marriage,
which is so sad. It's really sad when you think about it. There was that ad that used to say, we've come a long way,
long way,
baby."
baby.
And
Mhm.
I will definitely say we've
Yeah,
come a long way. But
yeah.
Angela, I would definitely love for you to come back because it would be nice to break down each chapter.
Break down.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would
because
love to
there's
do
a lot of material. So let me know when you're free, and I would definitely like to do that. But I
that.
think
Absolutely.
I just wanted to, I'm so glad we got to do this. As I was reading it, I was so excited. And I was like, I can't
Thank
wait for
you.
this conversation. Because,
Thank
like
you
I
so
said, I
much.
got a lot out of it. And me now being 61, I was in my 20s when I got married. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
this book would have really helped me a lot, and it would have helped me to realize this is not the right person and this is not the right time. I had a lot of growing to do.
yeah. We are.
So, yeah. So you can get your copy on Amazon, you can get the ebook, or you can get the hard copy like I did.
Yeah, and the title of the book is "Committed to the Company Covenant: How Couples Keep the Fire Ignited."
Yes.
How couples keep the fire ignited in the bedroom, in the kitchen, in with their family, with their children. You see, I had the fire there, that we keep the love
Yes.
ignited in our home, not just in the bedroom. Yes, that's great too, but
Yes.
also throughout the whole thread of your covenant, that you
So
keep the
important.
fire ignited.
So
Um,
important.
if I may, I have a prayer here at the end
Sure,
of the book. I
sure.
would just like to share as we close
Please.
out.
Please do.
And thank you all for joining us today. And so glad that I was a part of this time with Bree, heart to heart with Bree. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
having. So if you're in your living room or in your home, in the car, just say this prayer with us. And you're married, desire to be married, or had a bad marriage. Let us go to the Lord together here. Um, First of all, I just want to say thank you, Father. Thank you for this time. I don't take it for granted. And I just bless your name, Jesus. Dear Lord, we acknowledge that our marriage is a sacred covenant, a reflection of your own covenant with us. We seek to build our union on the foundation of faith, trust, and love as you have shown us through Jesus Christ. Lord, help us to love one another unconditionally as you love us with patience, kindness, and forgiveness, even when we disagree or face challenges. Grant us the ability to communicate openly and honestly, to listen with empathy, and to seek understanding in each other's hearts and minds. Lord, may we find joy in pursuing shared dreams and goals, growing together in wisdom and grace, and supporting each other's aspirations. Protect our marriage from the attacks of negativity, doubt, and temptation, and provide us with strength to overcome obstacles and remain united in times of hardship. Lord, may our home be a haven of love, peace, and joy, and may we be a source of strength and support for our family and community. Gracious Father, we pray that our love for each other will continue to grow stronger, deeper, and more beautiful with each passing year, reflecting your eternal love for us. Amen.
Amen. Amen. That was a great way to close out. For those who watch the replay, please feel free to post your questions and comments. And Angela, thank you so much for blessing us,
Shalom, shalom.
sharing with us. I mean, I enjoyed this conversation and I have learned a great deal.
I
And as
enjoy
I told you
you.
before, when I do get married again, I have to call you.
I think Elder Jones said the same thing. She said, "You're gonna be my officiant when I get married."
Yeah, so definitely. So we're speaking it out into being, right?
Amen. Amen. If that is the Lord said He'd give you the desires of your heart.
Yes, I believe it.
And if that's what you desire to have, just like myself and my husband, to have that another opportunity to love someone and for someone to love us back.
It's
It is
beautiful.
possible. It has
Yeah,
happened to me.
I
So it is
really, I
possible.
believe it. I definitely believe. And like I said, I remember because I've had you and your husband on a couple times, and those have always been that. Those were great episodes, and it gives me hope.
Yeah.
I know that marriage can be a beautiful thing.
Yes, it
Def-
can be. It can
Definitely.
be. Well, it was such a
Angela,
pleasure.
it was definitely a pleasure. And like I said, I'd like to thank the viewers for tuning in. And I'm looking forward to seeing everyone next week. Take care. God bless and have a wonderful week.
Shalom, everyone.